Welcome to the Business of Pleasure podcast. I'm your host, your sexologist bestie. And when I tell you guys today, we're getting to some really interesting discussion. I am so excited to welcome to you guys one of our guests that's going to be here with us today. And they have really created some really phenomenal educational tools that I think everybody's going to really appreciate. So just to kind of give you guys a notion, if you're new to the podcast, this is your one-stop shop for everything sexy, but we're also going to make sure you understand how you can turn that sexy into a little bit of success, right? Our podcast features a few different segments, and we're going to kick into gear with our first one called Empower. To do so, I want to introduce to you guys our guest today, who is a co-founder of the Hacienda community, who is an author of this amazing book called Beyond Satisfied, Kenneth Play.
I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you. Kenneth, everybody who knows me knows that I'm a little raw. I'm a little raw, right? And what I loved most is I took a lot of time. I always try to make sure I get a feel for the people that I'm going to talk to, but also I hold individuals who I come across by relationship of someone that I really respect a lot. Like, and that's really one of the ways I discovered you. I've seen other information over time, but I'll be honest, until one of those people featured you, it was what made me kind of say, well, let me find out what's going on with this one. And then I was over on your page, and I fell in love with not just what you spoke about, but the way you spoke about it, your comfort, your transparency. And so I really, really wanted you to be someone who I got a chance to introduce to this audience, because I think they'll appreciate that. Can you tell me, though, really, really quick, before we even go deep into it, how you identify and relationship structures, things like that? Because I know, but I would love our audience to kind of get an intro to that.
Yeah, I identify as disappointingly straight. So, I think my focus is on female pleasure. And sometimes it's challenging because what they expect from sex educator is that we could speak to everybody's pleasure and need, and I find that I want to focus on female pleasure. That's how I experience my sexuality and my orientation. So that's why I pour my focus into figuring that out.
Understanding that side of it. Okay. And I happened to discover that you had a little bit less of a conventional relationship structure. And I really appreciate that. But I think so many people are uneducated about that. And so if you are comfortable, if you can talk to us a little bit about that and help our viewers understand what some of these things means, because to some of them, these terms will be rocket science, and to others, it'll be like the thing that they wish they knew about their whole life.
Well, I mostly identify with the word non-monogamy because it has so many forms and different expression. Yes. But sometimes I joke around that I could do monogamy for 4 hours, so
I can understand that. Yeah. I think what it is, and I always say to folks that I'm in a consensual non-monogamous, and I think that people hear that and they think that it's a free for all for everyone, and it has so many different vast definitions of what that looks like. For me, in most instances, there's not much included than me and my partner, but we go to play parties where we get to, interact with other people. And sometimes, I always find that when people say they want to have threesomes and all that, they don't realize this is a form of non-monogamy because it's not mono. So can you tell me what made you open your mind to that side of things?
I think I've always been slutty enough and has enough of a novelty drive that the idea of just one person fulfilling all my sexual and romantic need is not only unfair to that person, but it just not really felt practical to me. But at the same time, growing up in more of a conservative, like Chinese background, that's the only relationship model that is talked about.
Which makes it a little conflicting. Yeah.
But I think it's more of a public facing view of having one, like your wife, your monogamous relationship is a structure, but don't ask, don't tell is probably the most practiced version of relationship structure across most culture.
Right.
Yeah. So monogamy, a strict monogamy, one partner for life, never anything having else, other, right? Or even serial monogamy. Most people think, they find someone, they marry that person. I don't know how many people has been that successful in their most strict form of monogamy. Right. But personally, I just thought that it's not something I desire. Also don't experience as much jealousy that I thought I would, even though I came from a very sexually insecure background, and that changed completely in my 30s, and I can't believe I do this for a living right now. But it just feels really more organic to me. And the biggest distinction that I found with monogamy and non-monogamy is I think there is a belief that in a monogamous relationship, I will hidden my desire for other people, so you never have to experience that. Right? And in non-monogamy situation is that I'm willing to deal with some of my jealousy or some of my pain for you to have some of your freedom. And I don't think, and so you still have to suffer on either side, one way or another. But to me, it's not even a binary choice. It is a spectrum. And then we also kind of swing in that spectrum depending on what's going on in life. What the circumstances
are will change it. I love that you shared that, because I think most relationships anyway, even friendships, there's a bit of give and take, right? And so it's never a situation where one person's always in favor. And that's just another form of saying, listen, there are times where I'm willing to tuck my stuff to the side if it's going to bring pleasure to my partner. And if bringing pleasure to your partner makes you happy, why is, something that you might not be open to? Something you said that I kind of want to bring back really quick, because it really resonated with me, first of all. I, being an African-American woman, right? And I have origins in more than just America, but I find that the biggest thing that stops people from pleasure in some areas is limiting beliefs based on cultural upbringing. So you're like growing up one way and they're telling you this. I remember my family telling me really young that, only whores gave head or whatever the case is. And so my relationship to doing that was like, I don't want to be perceived as that. Now I'm teaching people how to do it. Right. So how did you kind of get to a point of empowerment, of realizing that I want to pursue what makes me happy, despite what may have been traditionally nurtured or taught to me?
I think dealing with cultural sort of expectation on what a gender role, what a relationship should be versus how we truly feel inside. So for example, I think a lot of the traditional belief is designed to protect us and want relationship to function. And in past culture, it's really clear what the expectation is for everybody. There's less freedom. There's only one right way to do it.
Right.
So if you're outside the norm, you actually don't win in that game. I think we've been very lucky for the last 50 years that we have this tremendous freedom to navigate those complexity of human relationship. I think people desiring to have a devoted partner, think you're the best ever at all times, is a desire that we have, but it's also a maladaptive belief. It's untrue. Ooh. It's not. There's gonna be a lot of people who hates hearing that out loud. But I mean, for me, I rather subscribe to reality than it is a fantasy, an idea that we want. There's a feeling that we want to feel. I mean, you're a kink educator.
Yes.
And I love that kink is a place where we could play out those fantasy, where we could have civilized agreement, right? To work out our primal desire, like the author of the Bottoming book really talked about, right?
But it's something you said that was really good, is that you not only just playing out your fantasies, you're exploring things, right? But in an extremely consensual, pre-negotiated way. And that came up in another conversation I was having, but I love the other part of the primal part, right? Because I always tell people that I always come with cat energy, but sometimes it's big cat, sometimes it's little kitten. And we already associate a lot of those things with the animalistic, letting that out the cage. But when I think about animals, I think about them being wild and free. And so on one hand, we acknowledge that there are parts of us that crave that, but we deny the fact that this is all about freeing yourself and having a chance to do it, but in a safe way where there are boundaries that people are going to respect. Maybe I don't know if the animals are negotiated, but we do. Right?
I mean, we still have our Stone Age emotions that hasn't really evolved and changed, but our reality and a civilization had changed quite a bit, right? Like you talk about having birth control, things that we could have control now that wasn't previously available. So if you grow up in a society where property right and wealth is passed on based on your genetic code. Like, it's kind of messy without those rules.
Yes.
So, but right now we have more freedom to negotiate the agreements we have. But also at the same time, having this degree of freedom also creates a lot of anxiety for people on what they should choose. So it requires a lot of effort into really knowing yourself and what works best for you.
Yes, you hit it on the nose, because I think that one thing, and I'm sure you can relate to this in teaching, a lot of times when I've had experiences, even advertising classes that I'm doing, for example, it's always a lot of women who respond. They want to take the course predominantly. And some of these conversations for me, if more men subscribe to them, right, and understanding it, they might find that there are things about themselves. And for me, I thought it was, I'm going to learn this about that and learn this about that. But really, I was really learning me the whole damn time. And then once you have that deep understanding of self, then you can be more intentional when you're going forth with someone about that pleasure element. So that kind of takes me where I want to go, because we're going to get to some adult edutainment. And I want to start off by just speaking about how appreciative I am of you deciding to not just take what you learn, but put it in a format where other people can grow from it. Kenneth has a book called Beyond Satisfied, and I want to take some time talking about it. The subtitle is also A Sex Hacker's Guide to Endless Orgasms, Mind-Blowing Connection, and Lasting Confidence. And I'm going to be honest, Kenneth, you won me over from the cover with the word confidence. I am big on saying to people that confidence doesn't show up without certainty. And you don't have certainty until you've learned, until you've done it a lot, until you've practiced it a lot. And then you're like, I'm sure about this thing. So I really want to talk to you about what motivated this book. And if you could talk to just kind of like, if a person were to grab it, what could they expect to find in the pages of this book?
Yeah, I grew up super sexually insecure. This is a short version of the story, but the first hardcore porn I ever saw in my life was an orgy scene with like 6 or 7 guys who have porn star penises, and I was like 11 years old, coming to America, doesn't speak a word of English, and go like, this is what's expected.
This is what I gotta
have, right? And I'm looking at my average size penis, and you're like, shit, this is not gonna work out for me. It's like watching your only game in town is the NBA, and everyone is 6'6" and above, right, or whatever the case may be. And at that time, I didn't know that, bigger is not always better, and so many people have destroyed their own genital self-esteem to their confidence because they have a myth, and this is the only version of sexuality that people prefer, or that's the only way that they be satisfied. But with that insecurity, in my 20s, I discovered the sex positive community. I went to my first sex party. It kind of blew my mind, and that's the first time I saw people, not just porn star having sex,
just regular
like everybody
people.
And go like, it all works, and people really is not the same as porn, and certain people like a certain things, and it's all about genital fits, like what brings you pleasure. And then I realized that I've been living with this insecurity, right? And no matter how, I was thinking if I make a 6-figure income, get a 6-pack, things would change. But that internal insecurity never went away until I found this community and really invested in myself, learning to do all the different sex hack that I could possibly discover. And what I mean by that is I came from a fitness background. So I was really used to understanding like exercise science research paper and how to translate to how many sets you should do, how often you should go to the gym, like how much weight you should use, etc., to get the body you want. Okay. And also there's a lot of ancient wisdom, like from Tantra to Shibari from Japan. And so I've been this obsession of collecting all the best sex technique that I could possibly find. But the funniest thing about this, at first, I was like, let me get as good as possible at sex so I could compensate for something that I thought I was lacking. And the full circle coming around, I realized there's nothing wrong with me from the first place.
From the beginning.
And the person who's been rejecting, doing all the rejection was myself.
With yourself, yeah.
So, but the byproduct, I also gotten really good and learning all this knowledge. So I just want to share with the world. Yeah. That
makes so much sense. And so there were 2 things that you said that really resonated. And you mentioned porn, and I think a lot of folks are mostly introduced very young to sex, or when they get curious about it, one of the first places they land themselves is in some type of pornographic content. I know when I was really young, we had this channel that was before we were as progressive with TV and stuff and streaming services and et cetera. But we would have this channel that you could flip to at a certain hour at night. And there was this like older white lady who would have the raciest, craziest things, wild personality coming on. And we had this back button on the remote. So we would have our finger on it. So that way, if your parent walked in, you could hit the last channel button really quick and like flash back to Cartoon Network. But then whenever I wanted to go back to her name was Robin Bird. But that curiosity is what I first experienced friction against my clitoris, because the sheets, I was like just screaming and not realizing, I'm like, oh, what is that? And then my second encounter and with anything pleasurable was in the shower. I have the shower head fall, and it, you know, when it's on that setting, it just does what it wants, and it passed by, and I was like, run that back. So after that, I got curious, and when I went to start searching, I landed on porn sites. And now, knowing now what I know and not knowing then, it was the worst example of any place that anyone could learn about sex from. But most people are learning about sex from porn. So I am curious, because my first time feeling like I was getting more spark to like, what do I want to know? What do I want to learn? It was also in visiting my first play party. I didn't participate. I was as an active participant. I was a voyeur, and I still can be. I'm quite the voyeur now. And I learned that my voyeurism kind of kink was because I was a nerd. So I'm saying this to you because what you said in your story really resonated, in that I'm just seeing all of this stuff, and now I'm like, oh, what else? What else? What else? And you're studying ancient things, and you're like, everything's starting to make sense. So, coming to your book, you found all these hacks. Right? This might be a hard question, or maybe not. What is the hack that you learned that was the one that was like groundbreaking, changed your mind, had you completely like mind blown, that someone might find in this book that you're like, this was the life-changing hack that made me want to figure out what else I could learn?
You know, I am famous for teaching squirting quite a bit, right? But the techniques is the easiest to learn. What I realized that if you could combine 3 ingredients, and it's only really 3 that makes for epic, pleasurable, mind-blowing sex, is that your ability to help your partner focus into the moment. You could set up the right erotic context that is arousing and turns that person on. And you could provide the right sensation. And there's so many ways to provide sensation with different fingering technique. But if you could create like a movie director, you could create that scene, and same being a kink educator.
Right. There's a lot of scening. What is the environment? What's going on around everything? Yeah.
And if I could do all those 3 things, it is beyond what people thought was possible. Because even when we watch like Netflix now, we're like checking our phone. People are so distracted. So if you got a one moment of focus. And the second part about erotic context, which is so important, is what is happening actually arousing to that person? And we like to pretend that what's happening is arousing to us because we don't want to disappoint our partner. And that happens a lot with people we coach and couples. My job is helping people figure out, oh, this thing actually really turns me on. And let's find a healthy way to express this so everybody can have a great time.
And I think even exploring it, because and kind of even we'll talk about toys now, right? Even in exploring it, you said something about your insecurity, right? First of all, mad props to you for just taking an awareness of it, because a lot of people don't even realize that they have it. Or if they did, they won't say it out loud, right? And then the other thing you talked about is like, you know, you saw all of these people with these massive, like you said, porn-sized penises, and it had you like, you know, I don't know. And one of the things I commonly come across in clients when I'm working with them from a coaching end is trying to fill this gap of size and things like that. And it brings me to think about and external tools that you can also incorporate into an experience, because some people are born more endowed, some people are born more average, some people are born less than average and might have mini, you know, and they don't feel like they have the tool for the job, but they still want to deliver that pleasure, right? That is, I tell people all the time, sex toys taught me boundaries. And I only say that because I realize in venturing into certain toys, I was able to tell myself, I don't like this, I do like this, or I don't like this intensity, or I was getting a real sense. So I want to ask you about toys. right? Your relationship with them, and maybe the first experience you had with toys, and like ranking that experience to where you are now with them.
Yeah, I probably own more toy than most straight dude would have. Like, of thousands, literally. And I'm also a nerd and a sex hacker, so I like how all those toys are manufactured to develop and what sensation they bring. But I think for people who are hesitant, especially on the straight guy side, right? I don't want to be replaced by a toy because my body could never do the thing. Which I could respect it if you're a complete, you're a purist, right? You just like everything has to be organic just from your body, and you do you.
And respect that.
Yeah. But I like being a cyborg, and what makes humans like really dominate the planet is our ability to use tools. So I just look at that as labor saving device. Imagine I'm trying to turn the screw right now. I could have a power screwdriver versus using my hand,
or even a regular screwdriver is still more labor than the power one. That's a really good analogy.
I want to get the job done, and that's the part that I care about. So I look at it more as a labor saving device. And there's certain things like lube, which most people don't look at it as a sex toy. It just makes sex better. Like if you have a blowjob and you have dry mouth, it's not gonna work, and like you gotta drink some water. So is water a sex toy?
What's going on here? I say that all the time because people hear that and they automatically think everything is dry, everything is this. And I'm just like, I always talk about that. I've shared on the podcast before. I pregame my throat with lube all the time, flavored lubes. Just also not because like food is a big thing for me. I like things that, if you enjoy food, that's one thing. So if it tastes good, I'm going to be more enthusiastic what I'm doing. But I always say like, I don't want to have to do that initial get the mouth ready part. I just want the mouth to come ready, right? So I love that. And then you talked about it, that analogy, first of all, gold, because if people learn to view it more so as that, because I think we can all admit that there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? They say, as the saying goes, but certain methods do tend to just make life simpler. You can focus your energy more and other things. And just kind of before we talk about I gave you some things that I want to talk about. I do want to share this for our viewers who are listening. When you hear that analogy, sexual interactions and intimacy require a lot of energy. And if you're a person who's big on energy transference and the things that you take into your bedroom, you could have a bad day and bring that into the bed and put that on your partner. And you spoke about focusing and people being able to take their minds out of it. Well, if I have to spend a certain amount of time before intercourse to help set the scene, to help get you ready, that's going to take energy. So if I can conserve energy by incorporating a tool, and I'm not sitting there with my finger all day, and maybe this toy can do that, I look at it in a similar way. And I get a lot of pleasure off of watching reactions. So I realize, my hands can get this reaction. I'm curious, like, oh, what's going to happen if I put this thing there instead? And then seeing them go, that's a big, that's like an affirmation, that unspoken affirmation of their body changing just because I added a toy in. So that being said, I know you got a goodie bag. Well, you had more than one goodie bag. Yes. And one of the items that I wanted to talk about is this bad boy here. It is one of our newest toys. So happy you talked about development and things like that, because
this is fascinating. When
you look at it, it's interesting.
It's very 2024.
That's why we called it UFO. Because, and we also felt like the orgasm you get out of it is out of this world. Right. And we're very intentional down to everything, what we name the product, what color is the product, right? We wanted that alien extraterrestrial kind of vibe. So we went the purple. And you notice this gigantic saucer looking like attachment here, right? So I want you to first just get a chance to interact with it blindly and just see your reactions to touching it. The center button here is the power, and all of our toys feature like a safety measure. Like you have to hold it for 3 seconds to power on and off. So it doesn't cut on when you don't want it to, and it doesn't cut off.
Yeah, especially when you're traveling.
Have you ever? Yes. I've had a few vibrating bags come through TSA, but also like when you're in the middle of it and then someone accidentally hits the power button and you're like, it stops everything. So this is the UFO.
I know, it's funny, you see my hand, my moneymaker being all wrapped up. It's not a fingering accident, I promise. But this is perfect because if I cannot use my hand, it totally
it gives
helps.
you an extra thing. Yeah.
But right off the bat, I'm just going to go straight up like sex toy nerdum.
Yes.
What I really see that the intention behind the design there, I think in the last 3-4 years, suction toy became so popular. But the downside of a suction toy is that you have to have a specific seal on a clitoris. This is about this big or smaller and never move out of the suction range in order for it to produce consistent sensation. So because this doesn't rely on just suction, it also flap up and down. It would provide it, but you also have this vibrating disc around it, so you're not missing the clit.
Yes.
And the worst thing is to doing something that feels really good and all of a sudden you miss it by 2 millimeter, right? So I think it allows, especially in the middle of it, sometimes it's hard to aim.
It is the worst, especially if you're dealing with a female partner, for example, who really has to work hard to focus, right? Because the minute that happens, it's like a full reset button. And you're like, oh, I was right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really good.
Because you're riding that arousal
that
up and
momentum,
that sensation.
exactly.
Yeah. So not missing the target will super important. And I love the warming sensation, which I'm really curious to try about. You told me it warms up this part.
Yes. So the bottom, once you power it on, the bottom button, I always say with this one, you want to just
up, right?
Yes. So you can start it off without the cutting the warming on. It's got some pretty good speed. And it's got a slight curve, obviously, for G-spot angling. And did you see that flexible? Yes. Because, also a lot of people don't realize based on body type and anatomy of that body type, you might need different angling. Like I'm someone who needs to get a little, you got to get up in there, first of all. But that was a big thing for me. I remember using my first dual stim rabbit and it was so uncomfortable. It was solid and didn't have any give, any flexibility. And it hurt transparently. But I love that. I felt that bend. But the heat thing, I always tell people you can go about it more than one way. If you like temperature play or sensations, and I'm in BDSM too, so I love that. But I felt it was so cool. I used it with a warming lube.
Yeah.
And the warming lube actually has menthol on it. So it goes on cool. And then it warms with friction. But then the added heat element as it kicked in, because it takes like maybe a minute before you start to feel it get warm. And once it kicked in, it was just like this.
Yeah.
I swear I felt like I was like my body got like levitated. But I will tell people there's a built-in safety feature. So after 10 minutes of the heat use, it automatically shuts off and you would have to hit the button to keep it going. And that's to make sure, because I've passed out after. I've definitely passed out after us using the toy and the toy just dies because it's still going, but it won't stay hot and it doesn't heat beyond 99 degrees. So that's important too. So people understand, like, your body temperature is 98.7 as a baseline usually. So it doesn't get much warmer than you, but it feels like a warm sensation. It's like hot.
It's also really calming, right? To have that warm sensation.
Yes. And what I found is because the heat is targeted towards the very tip of it,
right here, right?
That G-spot really, really, really experiences it. But it has enough of a length to get closer to the A spot area as well with the thrusting.
Yeah.
So I love the controls being separate too, So I wanted to make sure, because I know you have a partner who would probably appreciate that too. And you got a chance to experience that. And I hope that we get great reviews back when you get a chance to get.
I'm just thinking, especially, and this might be not a stretch, but people might be into this. If you love anal sex and you want to just say fuck your girlfriend in the ass, and she want to experience double penetration with all the sensation, and it's really hard because I have one partner that really loved the double penetration sensation, but it's hard to move your hand while you're doing all the other stuff, and then you're trying to hold a vibrator there. So this kind of solves all those problems. So she could get all the sensation. Basically, it's like playing all the keys on a piano at the same time, right? Then I could just focus on fucking her ass, and this will bring the party. Yeah,
I love what you said about that, because a lot of couples who are monogamous doesn't mean that your partner might not still desire that type of stimulation. And most people hear DP and they think it has to be more than one partner to accomplish, which it can be, but it's not the only way to accomplish it. So that's a really good. I call those pro tips.
Yeah.
Whenever but you get a little bit of an extra use that's designed like a little bit more than what you might typically get the toy for.
What I'm curious to find out is the thrusting, if I would feel it, because while it's doing that inside of her vagina, I should be able to feel it because, you know, it's right in the
right
neighbor.
there.
Yeah,
right. It should be. And the what I will say is the vibration, there's a lot of intensity levels. And when you guys get it, it's packaged in a box like this. So we're very big on packaging because I think like opening the box is a part of the experience, one, but we also want it to be subtle and sleek. Where technically if you saw this sitting on a desk, you wouldn't really know what that represented. You would have to see the back, but it also has the feature information there. But what I love most is when you do open the box, and obviously this one is open, you'll have your charger. This is a rechargeable Vibe, and it's a magnetic charger that comes with it. You'll have the product manual that comes with it. Right there. But then we also always give you guys like a satin pouch for travel. So this material is to help deter the dust and things from kind of sticking to the surface, which you don't really deal with too much of that with a body safe silicone, but still, you know, it helps keep the toy really sanitary and clean, and you know, it's a little sexier way to
good toy hygiene.
Yeah. Every one of the products has that. So what we'll have is everything, even though you can have them all in a bag, at least there's some separation because certain silicones, if you bring them together, they destroy each other. They're like the best combination. So this is how we package things. So I hope you enjoyed that one, you guys, and please, I welcome.
It's so my brand color, so it's good to make videos with.
That's perfect. See, it's right, and when I put it down, I realized it matched the words on the book. So that is the UFO. But I also wanted to take a quick moment because while we're very big on pleasure, we believe that, you know, the self-care component is a huge part of pleasure. If you don't feel good about yourself, you're not taking care of yourself, you don't show up well in the bedroom. So I always like to give as well a wellness product or a care product. And so your bag also includes some things to help you enjoy this one. We have an edible lube, and the edible lube that's in there is vegan.
This is the body wash with the pheromone situation.
Yes, and this one is, you can actually try this. This one is the pheromone spray. If you want to try like a part of it to smell it, it's also one of our natural vegan products. So we don't use anything that doesn't need to be in it, right? And then it has a base scent, but it'll change maybe in about a minute or so.
That smells good,
Yeah, it's not. I always say it's not elevator cologne. You know, like when you're surrounded by that scent that's overpowering. But it is laced with pheromones to, you know, stimulate some attraction, and that can also be really good. I'm big on fragrance. I steal all of my boyfriend's t-shirts because they smell like him. Yeah. And if you're one of those people, you might love something like that. So there's a full set. There's a wash, there's a lotion, there's a shaving lotion in there as well. And then the body spray that you have as well.
Thank you so much.
Oh, of course. And there's one last product I have in one of those bags, another toy. Yes. There's the UFO toy in there. And then the other bag should have another one called The Rest.
This one.
Yes. So I'm not going to open your box. We want to keep it sanitary, but I'll show what it looks like here. So Thrust is really a vibrating. It's designed for backdoor fun, but it is a vibrating anal plug. This one right here, where it's not. I would say that this is better for a person who's a little bit already more used to it, or, you know, but because it is a little bit longer and larger, but it is ridged at the tip to give some pleasure sensation there. And then you'll notice here, there's also some ridges that's intended to give some perineum sensations. The whole thing vibrates. But I've also, if you look at the curve of it, right, I've also like opened one and used it for G-spot. And so I say this because a lot of times people are doing oral pleasure and they want to stimulate the inside. But again, that motion gets a little exhausting. You can use this and plug it. It'll vibrate the G-spot out here, and then you can still stimulate your partner in other ways. So this is also, and it's also USB rechargeable. So all of our toys are back with 1-year warranty. If anything ever happens, you can call us, but we don't really get too many of those calls.
It's unfortunate. I feel like a lot of straight men out there so worry about potentially liking anal stimulation or not in touch with those nerve ending. And I think regardless like you never want to do any butt stuff for yourself, it's actually good to experience at least once or twice. What it really teaches men is how vulnerable is to be penetrated, right? So they can relate to their partner better, and they understand how those nerve ending requires you to trust and relaxation. So
That
obviously,
I'm so sorry.
yeah.
When you said that, I had to like, that is, I don't think I've heard anybody speak about it like that. It's the closest you get to understanding what it is. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue. But that was, I just had to pause right there and let that sink for a minute.
Yeah. In fact, that lesson is so important because I am obsessed with the neuroscience, right? So we just basically have different nerve layout.
Yes.
So female body and male body is quite similar from a nervous system standpoint. But you would never feel those internal like G-spot cervical sensation. For us is through our prostate. Actually, some is deeper. That's why male toys are actually quite bigger and longer.
Yeah.
Because equivalent to our cervix is really high.
It's a little higher up. And people don't understand. Even the pelvic structure is very different. So angling and all of that changes very much on the male body.
But to me, those are just like buttons that you could stimulate those nerves. It lays on a different part of your body. But the distinction between having a penile or clitoral orgasm, that's more of a tension, sympathetic, like fight or flight system. And the other one, on the internal sensation, require a level of trust, surrender, being in your body. So if you never felt that in your own body, you would not appreciate what it's like to be there.
The one giving that.
Giving or receiving penetration. So I think it's great education for male. Even if it's not on your list for the rest of your life, just invest in understanding what your partner actually experienced. I think makes you a significant better partner.
A deal. It's so funny you say that because a lot of guys, even those who enjoy anal like sex with a female partner, I've even heard one guy say women are so dramatic that they don't even know if it's that significant. And I'm just like, have you ever, and of course the answer to the question was no, but I think what you're saying is so key. A lot of times I never forget my first experience trying anal. It was hell, right? And it was really just because of my lack of information, number one, at the time, because I was much younger, and my partner's lack of understanding. And you put those two together and you got a catastrophe. And I found that the next time I tried it, it was with actually a more endowed person than the first one. So I was more scared up front, but they had more information and they really worked to my comfort. And before I knew it, I was so relaxed that I was like, this was easier. So I love that you shared that because it's really a depth of understanding and empathy. You have to understand that there are certain things that men go through, women go through, we will not experience, but as close as we can get to understanding it is what helps us, form connection. So really, really quick before I go to the last question, a couple of questions I have, which is more so about the business end of it. And it kind of feeds into the book. I want people to know, first of all, where they can find it. But if you could give us a little bit of crass information on, because like I said, you also co-found Hacienda the Community, which is another space. And it taps into the business side of the pleasure end of it, right? So what I know you had a great experience at a play party, but what made you want to take on the responsibility of being a part of creating those type of spaces? Because I don't think people realize, as the people who are creating it and curating, how much thought, how much safety, how much stuff has to go into it to make everybody feel like it's home for them. So first, tell them where they find the book. Second, please tell us about the community and more. I
start with my teaching first. So you could find this on kennethplay.com, and my new audiobook was just made. You could find it on my website, kennethplay.com. And also I have a bunch of free tutorial that people could download, especially on squirting. So the book also has a video course, which has over 80 different videos covering anything from anal, fingering, squirting, kink, multiple orgasm, etc. And instead of me just giving them information, I demo all the technique because I taught fitness for a really long time. So all the diagrams that you will find on the book also has a QR code, which you can see an animated diagram on how I do it externally and internally.
Love that.
So
I love that.
So that's on.
The visual learners will kill for that.
Yeah. Just think of like a men's health magazine, but in this format.
Yes.
For Hacienda, it really changed my life. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be as sexual and slutty as I am, but have a place where I could express my desire and also feel a sense of belonging. So because that resonated with me so much, and it's really the sense of belonging, because when people have a high sex drive, right, and they have different novel sexual desire, they want to find community so you don't feel alone. And when you feel safe to express those desire in a healthy negotiation, it's very fulfilling. So that's why I've been part of the community for a really long time.
I 100% encourage that. That's really big. A lot of people don't and I don't know if you're aware, but with our company, we have consultants who are kind of like our educators around the nation. And it's like, that's what they're doing. They're creating these mini safe spaces. But once people find the things they enjoy, like you said, now you're like, where are my kink brothers and sisters and like-minded individuals out there? I do want to emphasize to folks when some information, just because there's a lot of play spaces out there, but how do you choose? You'll notice in many spaces, you want to look for a space that prioritizes information, that prioritizes people having a safe, open space to communicate. There's a safety. In most play parties, you have monitors, people who are there, making sure everybody's good at all times. And you want to make sure that there's a great vetting process. You shouldn't be able to just walk through the door. And so there are questions that vetting processes may ask that will help the individuals organizing the space determine if you're a good fit for that community. So that way they're not bringing anybody in who might be a danger or really just doesn't have the right mindset. So I just want to share that because I know a lot of you guys viewing may have never been into a play space or joined a lifestyle group. But if you're curious, right, there's one place to start. Make sure you guys also check out Hacienda Community because they could be the community for you that you need as well. You guys aren't just here though, right?
We have a space in New Orleans as well. Okay, and we just opened a brand new nightclub called The House. And next door we're going to turn it into a members only club. Basically it's not just a party, it's just open. So that is in development. But ultimately, like you said, we've been around for 12 years and it's been a continuous learning journey on how to create the right policy, the right training. It started off as just a friend group. Yeah, right?
Just like we'll all get together.
And then it became bigger and bigger and bigger.
And you're like, wait, we got to put some parameters around this.
So now we really have very like startup structure, like to have all those things down. But ultimately, what I even talk about in the book, I think the golden rule for me when it comes to negotiating healthy sex or about consent is that you have to put the other person's well-being above your desire to have sex with them right now. And if you could do that, then everything else is just like how you negotiate, how you talk about it. But other people's wellness has to be
in front and center. Yeah. I think the other part that I'll say that I think I learned in it is that you go into it with when they say open mind, you really do have to have an open mind, but it's also very good to make sure you're aware. A lot of times people go to do these things and they're starting out under the influence. They're doing, and I'm not saying we're all grown. So sometimes people are partaking in alcohol, things like that, and there are many places where marijuana stuff is legal, right? So I understand that adults may want to engage in things from that realm, but a part of being sane, a part of being aware means that you're of coherent mind where you're really aware of what's happening and you have the ability to say, I don't know if I like this, or I don't know if I feel good. But if you're not in that present state of mind, you could be very confused. So just giving these tips to those whenever you're trying something new, even if it's not in a play space, let's just say you're doing it at home, try to bring yourself to a space of awareness where you know that you're going to be able to recognize and communicate with your partner that this is something you're loving or something you're not or whatever it is. Just like you teach, that's one thing I'm very big on teaching folks. How do you have those conversations? How do you introduce it? Because a lot of times, I don't know if you've come across this, but I come across a lot of people where one part of the pair is very informed and they're trying to figure out how to get their partner to be even as a little bit as close to what that looks like. And there are ways that you can introduce these conversations that might shut a person down entirely. So I do want to leave on this note of saying it's very important to be aware of your insecurities, which that's why I was so happy you said that, because that awareness allows you to communicate to your partner, hey, this is an area I'm not feeling that good about right now. So, you don't want someone coming in there saying, you little, and then you're like, dang, I was already feeling bad about that. So just make sure that you're thoughtful, you're aware, and that you're communicating with your partners. But I really want to thank you for taking time to come here. I know that folks are going to dive into this book and they're going to really, really love what they're seeing. I can't wait to go deeper into the materials here. And I am a visual learner. And so I will be using the QR function all freaking night. Thank you, Kenneth. Is there anything, can you tell folks where they can connect with you? I know you said your website, but let them know how to find you on social media.
Find me on Instagram, and mainly my website has connected to everything else.
To everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm just so excited to be here. I can't wait to try out your toys. And I love meeting another sex educator who's into the business side of this world. I think it's very empowering. It's awesome.
I tell people all the time, I never ever raised my hand at 5 when they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I thought it was going to be a dancer, like a professional choreographer or something like that. Never did I think, I'm going to be a clinical sexologist. I actually, and I don't talk about this as publicly, but I actually ended up in it because I was doing like toy parties on the side. A lot of people pick it as a side hustle or whatever. And it started that way for me. And I came across one individual at an event who came to place an order with me, and she broke down in tears. And I was just like, why are we crying? She's like, I want to buy a sex toy. And I was like, why are we sad about that? Right? I didn't understand. But this young woman shared with me, and trigger warning for anyone, that she had experienced sexual assault in her young years as like I think she was about 13, if I'm remembering right. And she abstained from sex pretty much her whole life. And so coming to this party, which was supposed to just be a fun night in, and there's penis straws everywhere, and she just was like, I thought I was just coming for that. She didn't realize how much it was going to bring up for her. And I wasn't at that time a sexologist, but I did know a lot about toys. And I was able to say to her, hey, you can use this to explore your body. And if you like it, keep going. If you don't like it, you can stop. You can change the setting. You can see, but there's no one there who's controlling it but you. And but I knew that day I never wanted to not be qualified again. So that was the day that I said, what do I have to do to help her? And it took, so you people look at this business and they only see, very clear lines of what they think it looks like. Guys, this is a very, very, very widespread, diverse industry, and I'm never bored working. That's one plus.
Especially what you just shared. I have countless clients who feel very alone about what they are facing and what they're dealing with. And it's not a safe space for them to talk about it and confront it, right? And if it wasn't for people in our industry, they able to open up and talk about it. And sometimes they don't realize all the problem that is in their head, that it could heal through their body. Because when they start experiencing consensual, pleasurable sex that is healthy and is pleasure-centric, then it changes. But you cannot change your body with your mind. So it kind of have to go the other way around.
Yes,
so,
yes. That's a really good way to put it, actually. So yeah, it does. It changes, and it's such a release. I always tell people when I have an orgasm, I'm not just letting go of like bodily fluids or whatever. I'm letting go of whatever is heavy on me in that moment, and I choose to allow that to be one of my pathways to letting things go. But it's also how I keep myself from wanting to yell at my kids all the time. Like anytime I feel prone, I'm like. And then I come back like, what do we want for dinner? And people always say, oh, you're so good with your kids. I come a lot. So that was really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. You guys, please check in with Kenneth and tune back in next Money Making Monday so you can learn more about the business of pleasure. Thank you for tuning in today. Bye-bye.